All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the regular monthly open meeting of the third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2020. It's 9:30, and we are in the boardroom as well as on TV6, Zoom, and Granicus. I'd like to start by calling the meeting to order, and I see that we have a quorum. All of our directors are here. We'll now make our Pledge of Allegiance. Ralph, will you lead us today? Thanks.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ralph. I'd like to acknowledge the third members present here in the boardroom, as well as those watching on TV and via Zoom and Granicus. And I'd also like to acknowledge any media that may be present or watching. It's now time to approve today's agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Jim so moves, and was that in Jules seconds? Did anybody have any suggested changes to today's agenda? All right. Any objections to approving it as is then? Seeing no objections, we will consider the agenda approved by consent. And now we'll move on to approve meeting minutes for two different meetings. Let's address each of them separately. First, last board meeting of July 19th. Can I get a motion to approve those meeting minutes? Jules moves. Donna seconds. Anybody have any suggested changes to our last board meeting's minutes? Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll consider those approved by consent. And now can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the agenda prep meeting held on August 5th? Annie moves. Ira seconds. Any suggested changes to those minutes? Jim? Okay, Jim was not there, so he will abstain. Any other comments regarding those? All right, so approved by consent other than Jim, who's abstaining since he wasn't able to attend. All right, and now we're on to agenda item 6, the report of the chair. Just have a few quick updates for you. First, over the past few weeks, while the board and staff have continued to work on next year's budget, no significant changes have been identified, and we're still on track to not raise the third mutual portion of your monthly assessment next year. However, it does look like the GRF portion for next year's monthly assessment will increase by $3.81, meaning your 2023 monthly assessment will be increasing from $777.12 to $780.93. So just giving you that update. Second, I wanted to let you know that while our efforts on the budget begins to wind down, one of the things that I'll be working on with the board is to take a look at our committees, most specifically how we can get members more involved in providing advice. We have a lot of experience within our community, and I'd like to tap into that to help ensure that the committees and the boards are making the best decisions. For subcommittees, specifically landscaping, maintenance and constructions, and architecture, I've asked the committee chairs to prepare a prioritized list of all of the things that they're working on. And my plan is to share that list with our members so that they can comment on the list, add things, change the priorities, or help us change the priorities. And I'm also hoping that by seeing the lists, the members who are knowledgeable about specific items on the list might offer to assist us with their expertise. So I'll be sharing some updates about how this committee effort is progressing in the coming weeks. And then lastly, as I mentioned in the last board meeting, we have an open board director position available starting in October for a 3-year term. And so just a little bit about that. Starting on Thursday, September 1st, candidates who are interested in filling that open board position can obtain a candidacy application by visiting the community center and speaking with a corporate secretary who will provide the application and instructions. The member candidates must then return their completed applications and their candidate statements to the office of the CEO by 5 p.m. Friday, September 30th. So essentially, they have the month of September to apply. And then a special board meeting will be held on the afternoon of Monday, October 10th, for the third board to hear from the interested candidates and then choose the candidate that we would like to fill that open position. So again, if you're out there, if you have some time and you have ideas about how you can improve the community, please consider volunteering to join the third board and help set policy, help make funding decisions, and help improve things for your neighbors. So that completes my remarks for today. As always, thanks for listening and thanks for your support. And we'll move on to agenda item 7. We'll now get an update from the VMS board. Rosemarie De Lorenzo is providing today's update. Good morning, Rosemarie.
Good morning, Mr. President, the dedicated third board, and our hard-working staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present VMS's update. What we do present at this part is primarily things that the board is involved in, because we have our CEO, Siobhan, present what VMS is doing. So we have all the things that the board is really involved with. So the first thing is last Monday, my handwriting is terrible. Last Monday, August 8th, we had our client services meeting regarding manor alterations. I would say it was a good meeting, and it was quite lively. So some of the things that we talked about is that we're really working on improving that department, and we're providing real-time mutual consent tracking. Siobhan had prepared me all of these little tracking things, and I said, if I have them on the screen, I'm going to drive you crazy. Could we have the screen, the thing up? There, thank you. The mutual consent performance form is being updated, and we're looking at matrix formatting. We're recording calls for quality insurance. We're sending automated emails to applicants. The thing is though, after the email, we have to make sure that we follow up, because if you just get an automated email, that isn't good enough. So that's up there. And we're also just trying to improve the department in every way, because that is the biggest hot button in the community. I know that. My contractor knows it. Jim knows it. A lot of people know it. So because of the meeting where we showed a lot of things that we were doing, but we had your valuable input, we had something that Siobhan has agreed to work with staff, and I'm going to say we're going to try to get them done in 3 months. Maybe it might take a little bit longer. Like holding communication meetings with the contractors. I know that is not something that we should be held back on. We have to figure out who the contractors should be and have a meeting with them and have the right people attend the meeting to hear their input. That's what we want. We don't want to hear complaints. We want their input so we can improve. We really have to clarify the asbestos requirements, because they have been different from the very beginning when they started having those requirements. We have to, and this was a great thing that was brought up by Ira, was talking about we haven't updated our solar procedures. I also asked the board if we still want to have a contractor list. So, see, we're not the only ones who have an assignment. The board has an assignment. So that's really important. So we came up with a lot of things, and we're going to really dedicate a lot of energy to this department. I feel like we've improved it a little, but we have quite a long way to go. Next month's topic has to be determined, not next month, but the month after, will be determined by input from the boards. So when we have the meeting, even this afternoon, you could let us know what is the topic you would like to talk about. You know, we haven't talked about resident services for a long time, but maybe resident services it is doing much better than it used to do. So we'll ask for that input from you. And speaking of resident services, our year-to-date KPIs are we've had 60,362 calls year-to-date. Don't worry about it. I'll just talk. We've had 30,360 calls year to date. Percentage of the calls that were answered is 80%, 80.96%, which is closer to 81, but our goal is 90%. When we say answered, we mean answered. We don't want, it's not going to a message. And the average wait time is 3.23 minutes, and our goal is 2 minutes or less. We also have a number of walk-ins, and that's the next slide. We have 24,264 walk-ins, which is about a third of the phone calls. I actually I've never experienced going into resident services and doing anything in there. And so I had to do something with the parking. And it's like so professional now. The little name is up on the screen. You sit there very professionally. The people are very friendly. So it was a very pleasant experience. A lot has been done to improve the way that department feels. But the biggest thing is we don't really want, or our goal is not to have the residents come. We used to serve cookies there because they used to take so long in there. Don't get any ideas, Siobhan. But we want the residents to learn how to use their resident portal. And that is on the one of the things on the screen. And the thing is I don't know how many people in here know how to use the resident portal or if it's user-friendly. Because we were teasing Chuck because sometimes he has a hard time with the portal. So the basic thing is we have to make sure that it's user-friendly, but we're also going to be working with the PC Club or other ways to teach the residents or work with the residents to use the resident portal so they don't have to come in or they don't have to use the phone. Because one of the things is, and you could attest to this because you on the board are signing the paperwork, we're having residents move in who work. Now, a lot of people work from home, but they still work. So calling during the day or anything during the day. So we really want to push using the resident portals, and I think that would be a great idea. The other thing that came up during our meetings, because once every other month we have the client services meeting. That's the boards are the clients, and on the other month, we have a president's meeting. In our last president meeting, we were talking about communication. And and Annie could attest to this because she's on communication, although we try to do so many things with the breeze and the blast and this and, so many things, people always say, I didn't know. So we talked about it. We finished up talking about it last week. We're going to have some resident focus groups, probably maybe 3 or 4 focus groups are diverse, probably about 10 people, and ask them what they think of our communication or if they have any ideas as to how to improve our communication. Because our goal is to not only do things to improve our service, but to make sure that people know that we've improved our service. An example would be Saturday morning, I had to send an email to Siobhan and say, is the gym open today? So how many little notes did we get? And either we don't remember, and the gym was open, and it was a great experience to have it open. But, we can't have everyone emailing Siobhan. She would probably get really tired of it. So we really want to communicate better. And by communicating better and letting them know the things that we're doing, we hope to improve the trust in the work that we're doing. And that's really our goal. The last thing on my last slide is our strategic plan update. And we're working on facilitating operational excellence and sustainability. And we want to attract, retain, and develop high-quality staff. But there will be a number of changes based on our new EDP program, but we want to work on something that we have to evaluate again with our key performance indicators, and we have asked Mark to be part of that group. So we determined something that's very important to the community that we could measure to see where we're going, because when we do this, we're very often able to identify things along the way to improve our service. And that's what we are. We're a service business. In the next month, in this past month of August, at the VMS meeting, we had Chuck Holland there, and he talked about the EGP and also resident services. Next month, the person who will be speaking is Robert Carroll. So if anybody has any questions on the buses, trash, we talk to him about trash all the time, janitorial service, the fleet, the size of the fleet, cleaning the streets or cleaning our parking areas, any number of the things, please send any questions in advance to Siobhan, because we don't want the directors to just come with a bunch of slides and sit there and listen to the slides. We like to have interaction. So if you, and anyone can come, all of the board members are encouraged to come. So that is our update as far as that goes. So I am finished now, and I thank you for the opportunity to present information to this board and to the community. I am standing here, not running away, just in case you have any questions.
Thank you, Rosemarie. Anybody have a question? Looks like Ira has a question or comment.
Yeah, a couple, actually. On page 2, you talked about manner alterations, improvements, and there's an ever-increasing amount of open consents on the log. And I was wondering, is there a simple way to determine how many are waiting for the homeowner to complete and how many are waiting for you to complete, you meaning alterations?
I was going to say I have enough of my own.
Yeah.
And Siobhan prefers answering.
Yes, one of the performance reports, I think we put it on screen last week, shows the different phases of the mutual consent process.
Right.
And we can tell where a mutual consent is, whether it's waiting for the resident to provide additional information or whether it's in staff's court. So yes, we have that capability.
So is it possible then at the bottom of the spreadsheet to have just a simple totals so we can track and see if it's going the right way, even though the number of consents open may increase if they're waiting for the homeowner, that should not be against you per se. That's what I'm looking for, just a simple way to do that. And then on the unanswered calls on page 5, the 21%, do all of those go to voicemail? The 21%, I mean the 19% that doesn't get answered? You said you answer 80.96% of the calls. To the ones that don't get physically answered, are they all going to voicemail, or are they just being dismissed, hung up on? Or?
No, but I mean, I'm going to answer just for myself, but Siobhan will probably give the better answer. They might not go to voicemail if somebody doesn't want to go to voicemail and they hate voicemail and they hang up. So that could be some of them,
Okay.
But Siobhan?
What our data shows is that many people simply hang up and call back.
Okay, so they're tired of it. Okay, it's the time frame. And then with regards to your focus groups, that's my last one.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking to see what you're doing correctly, which is a good thing. Are you assuming the areas you don't get identified by these focus groups as positive to trust or satisfaction are the opposite?
Well, the thing is a focus group is such an exchange, so it isn't like questions or whatever.
Right.
So a good focus group leader, who I believe that we have, because we're bringing in somebody from the outside, will draw that out. So yeah, we want to hear what works, what doesn't work, but the biggest thing that I want to hear is, what are we not doing? Is there some obvious thing that we're not doing? Because once I said to Eileen, as much as we hate to use paper, maybe we should just make some copies of the blast and put it, the blast, and put it at the desk so while the people are sitting in the room, they could read it. Because maybe people don't read the blast. But again, I don't want to start having extra pieces of paper hanging around, and so but maybe somebody will come up with something like that. So it's whether it's good, bad. If all of the focus groups said something we're doing, I won't mention anything, is useless, then we would have to change it, because that's the goal.
Okay,
Now, we will give you honest feedback of the feedback.
okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Jim?
This may be more for Siobhan than you,
Oh, that's
but
okay.
still VMS oriented. Do we have any way of tracking, these calls are calls going to resident services to a generic number and then being dispatched? Do we have any statistics, or do they keep records, like say you call the leasing office and they don't call you back? Is there any tracking of that? Does that individual track their phone calls that come in?
There is that capability. We need to implement it, and we've been having those discussions as of late.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, I did have one, probably more for Chuck and Siobhan. So if you can back up one slide. So the average wait time on the calls is 3 minutes and 23 seconds. I hear from a lot of people that say it's a lot longer than that. And so I understand that on certain times of the day or week, the volume is high, like Monday morning, everybody's calling in. Is there some way we can communicate the best times to call to not have to wait a long time somehow? So,
Well, we have run articles indicating that the best time to call is between 1 and 4 p.m. Any day of the week, just not in the morning hours.
Okay.
But we can continue to publicize
Yeah,
that.
Okay,
we
I
have
saw that on the next
Yeah, we
slide.
have put that in the blast, but, you know, well, you can.
Too much
You
communication.
can.
Sorry, just
remind
teasing you, Rosemary.
We're going to remind everyone now, try not to call Monday morning.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. I did see the 1 to 4 on the next slide, but I wasn't sure if that was the walk-ins or everything, but okay, thank you. Donna, now.
Perhaps, I don't know that that's on the website, but not everybody reads the briefs, much as we hope they will. But if they're going to the website and it says best times to call, that might be a good
That's
idea.
great, all right. Jim?
And another possibility, if the recording answers for them to leave a message, that statement could be added into that recording.
Yes, and if you heard Chuck's presentation at the VMS board a week or so ago, we are switching our telephone technology, and with that will come a lot of new tools, such as leaving a message and staying in the queue and being called back. So we are looking at all technology that's available to us.
But even in that recording to say, best time to call is between 1 and 4 if you're waiting for this call.
Good. All right.
A long time ago, we had someone come in who told us that they thought we should split the calls in resident services, just like you talk about in manor alterations, and that people should say if they're from Third or United, because the calls on United tend to take longer, you know, about my washer, this and whatever, whereas in Third, you know, they might be shorter. And I mean, that was even before we had automation, you know, with all of the do this. But I always wondered if splitting it would be an idea, if it would be helpful to the staff. So I hope we can look at that too. So am I done now?
Any other questions, comments for Rosemary? Rosemary, you are excused. Thank
you very much.
for staying at the podium for us. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now move on to the open forum. At this time, members may address the Board of Directors regarding items within the jurisdiction of this Board of Directors and not on the agenda. The board reserves a right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum to 30 minutes. Each member is asked to speak no more than 30 minutes.
3 minutes.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Yeah, speak no more than 3 minutes, that sounds good. Yeah. A member may speak only once during the forum, and the speaker may not give their time to other people. Members not in the boardroom can also share their comments by joining this meeting via Zoom or by emailing your comments to meeting@vmsinc.org to have your message read during this open forum, should time permit. So, Paul, do we have any open forum?
At this time, the only member comment we have is for item 13C, which is later on.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then we will skip agenda item 9, which is responses to open speakers, and move on to agenda item 10, the CEO report. Siobhan?
Thank you, Honorable President, members of the board. This morning, I just wanted to highlight the additional hours that have been added at our amenities. And I want to start off by thanking our residents who have stepped forward to fill a new part-time position that we have created to allow these amenities to add hours. This position is called a recreation leader / community center attendant. And it was created with the spirit of partnering with our residents to help open our amenities. So again, I owe a debt of gratitude to our residents who have stepped forward to fill these positions. In terms of additional hours, the community center is now open for table tennis on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. And beginning tomorrow, they will also be open on Wednesday evenings till 9 p.m. And Saturday and Sunday hours have been added from noon to 5 for table tennis. At the Community Center Fitness Center, the fitness center is now open till 8 p.m. on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. And as Rosemary indicated, there are now Saturday and Sunday hours from 8 a.m. to noon at the Community Center Fitness Center. The MAC Learning Center on the third floor of the Community Center is now open Saturdays from noon to 3 p.m. This is a 2-month trial basis because it relies on volunteers from the club to staff the Learning Center. Clubhouse 7 added hours this Sunday. It was open from 8 to 5 p.m. And beginning on August 28th, 2 Sundays from now, the facility will be open until 10 p.m. on Sunday evenings, allowing many of our larger clubs to take advantage of that time. I also want to mention that a Second Circuit training class has been added at Clubhouse 1, and that starts today, Tuesday, and residents may register for that using ActiveNet. Beginning tomorrow, new poolside food and beverage service will be available at Pool 2, provided by Restaurant 19. And this is a simple arrangement where residents have menus and they just call in their orders and then it's delivered by Restaurant 19. And we'll be announcing future openings as additional employees are processed through the pre-employment process and properly trained. And my last announcement is that the GRF board has completed its comprehensive review of the Agewell proposal and has decided not to move forward with the proposal as presented. They have encouraged staff to continue to work with Agewell to find mutually beneficial arrangements that may reduce our costs and improve services for our residents. And that concludes my update this morning. Thank you.
And the Agewell thing was the bus system you're referring to, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody have any questions, comments for Siobhan? Jules?
You mentioned something about a Second Circuit training. Could you explain that?
Sure. Circuit training class is an exercise class that has been added at Clubhouse 1.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments for Siobhan? All right. Thanks, Siobhan. Appreciate that update. We're now to agenda item 11, consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are recommended for action by committees and will be enacted by the board by one motion. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar? Donna moves. Jim seconds. Any questions, comments regarding the consent calendar? Okay. Any objections to approving the consent calendar as is? All right. Hearing no objections, we'll consider the consent calendar approved. And we're now at agenda item 12, unfinished business. For agenda item 12A, the board is being asked to vote on an updated inter-board anti-harassment, anti-abuse, and anti-intimidation policy and charter for a joint hearing body. Siobhan, do you have any opening comments regarding this for us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. What is before the board today for consideration and introduction for a 28-day review is the product of revisions considered and made by the working group that has developed this proposed policy. And that consists of the presidents of each of the mutuals, GRF, and the VMS chair. The goal is to have a consistent and clear anti-harassment policy throughout the community. This policy was first introduced in May, and then it was sent back for additional work. That took place in June. In July, additional work was done, and now it's being brought forward again. I think you will find that this policy is now a little more user-friendly, easier to read, and we developed a very comprehensive flow chart that should explain the process from start to finish in its entirety. The GRF board considered this at their meeting on August 2nd and voted unanimously to introduce it. Last week, the United Board considered the proposed policy and had a tie vote, so that did not move forward with United. And this morning, Third will be asked to consider introduction of the proposed policy.
Okay, thank you. All right. Before we go too much further, I'm going to ask Chris to read the resolution, please. Thanks.
Excuse me. Whereas the Board of Directors of Third Laguna Hills Mutual, or Third, Golden Rain Foundation, or GRF, and United Laguna Woods Mutual, or United, require a clear and consistent policy to address claims of harassment, abuse, and intimidation by directors to staff of Village Management Services, Inc., fellow directors and residents, as well as claims involving harassment, abuse, and intimidation by residents to staff of VMS, directors, and other residents. And whereas this anti-harassment, anti-abuse, anti-intimidation policy is intended to provide guidance relative to such behavior and issue a mechanism for addressing same by the Anti-Harassment, Anti-Abuse, and Anti-Intimidation Joint Hearing Body Committee. And whereas this policy is being adopted by the Board of Directors of Third, GRF, and United in the exercise of their respective duties to maintain, protect, and enhance the value and desirability of Laguna Woods Village and the interests of all of its members. Now therefore be it resolved, August 16, 2022, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby introduces the Anti-Harassment, Anti-Abuse, and Anti-Intimidation Policy and Charter of the Joint Hearing Body Committee as attached to the official minutes of this meeting, and resolve further that Resolution 03-20-27 adopted April 21st, 2020, is hereby superseded and canceled. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
All right, thanks, Chris. All right, can I get a motion to approve the updated policy and charter and place it on 28-day review before we discuss this? Donna moves, Jim seconds. All right, are there any questions, comments regarding this? All right, I see Ira first, and Jules, we'll get to you second.
I just have, since we're basically basing everything in state and federal law, it's conceivable that some of the people involved in some sort of altercation that would fall under this resolution end up in court outside here. And what if the court of law finds the opposite conclusion that we have found? What would our liability be with regards to this policy? That's my only question.
That is an excellent question. My thought is that the policy is subject to interpretation. I understand that all the laws and applicable state and federal laws are laid out, but it is still subject to interpretation by the joint hearing body. So I don't know that there would be substantial liability associated with that.
Thanks. Jules?
That's your opinion. I think this is a terrible idea. It states right up front exactly what its intent is. It said it in the opening paragraph that Chris read. They're talking about harassment by directors to staff. Now, we have 6,102 members in this little community. How many staff people do we have? How many employees do we have? Yet, if you go and look at the number of harassment type complaints that are filed in our disciplinary proceedings, you will find that the majority of them are for members harassing staff. Now, that's completely it's totally out of whack. We have enough provisions right now without a new set of harassment regulations. we can easily, convict someone of harassment without something like this. This proposal is unnecessary, it's unfair, and it represents a danger to anyone who votes for its adoption. Several recent notorious harassment cases show that the primary purpose is to protect staff from normal, if unpleasant, interactions with members at large, with the membership. It's unnecessary. We already have enough rules. It's unfair. Even the current procedure is unfair. Compliance, which is staff, will investigate the complaint by staff. It makes findings of fact, written statements by staff, and then report its findings to the board or to the committee. What is the committee presented with? What evidence is there? No evidence except a written statement. How do you cross-examine a written statement? How do you know that the statement is accurate? How do you know, for example, let's just take a situation where you have our own version of the Hatfields and the McCoys. A tells the officer that B called her a name, and the officer files a report, and that report gets reduced to a written statement, and that becomes the basis for a complaint that B insulted A and therefore should be disciplined. Well, what if B says that's not true? B comes into the hearing and says that's not true, and what is the evidence that supports A? A piece of written paper. So that means we have to accept the written paper as fact, because so it's an impossible situation. This turns traditional American principles of fair play on its head. It is really terrible. Let's look at what the harassment definition under this new proposal is. Following someone around to make a point, disrupting an organized activity, excessive telephone calls or emails, disparaging someone, humiliating someone. Those are now things that are prosecutable. Well, everybody does that. Everybody makes more phone calls than the recipient wants, because the recipient doesn't want any phone calls. We recently had a situation where an actual director of United was prosecuted for harassing one of the staff members because he wouldn't accept his answer. He gives an answer, it wasn't an answer. He pursues the matter and he gets prosecuted for it. That doesn't make any sense. Here is what the law says is harassment. It's the unlawful harassment, pardon me, I'm pulling a Marco Rubio. Harassment is the unlawful violence, a credible threat of violence, conduct directed at a specific person that seriously alarms, annoys, or harasses them, and that serves no legitimate purpose. The course of conduct must be that which would cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress. This is garbage arguments. Oh, he made too many phone calls to me. He's now guilty of harassment. It's true, we're not a court of law, but we can impose $500 fines on someone and continue them day by day. We could take a person's rights away to broadband or television or what have you. These are serious accusations, and we should not lightly accept them.
So you're against
the balance of my time.
So one of the things that you may have missed is that there is a legal review in this updated process, so that a lawyer looks to make sure that the if the investigation should be positive in that they think that there might have been some harassment, abuse, or intimidation, the lawyer will look at it to make sure that it meets the legal definition that you refer.
I appreciate and I think that's a great idea, and it's one of my proposals for how we should handle all compliance problems. Excellent idea. There's only one problem. In my experience, there has never been a prosecution that our lawyer has not supported, whether it makes any sense at all. Never once did our lawyer, in all my experience, ever say that goes too far. That's what I'm saying. Do I think there should be someone giving legal advice rather than someone whose job it is to determine whether a case is properly brought? Sure, I think it's whatever I just said. The point is that we should have professional people determining this. An excellent idea. But the point is, when you have a definition of harassment that, you know, is just so out of whack and out of control, and you don't have a proper management. I mean, in other words, we can't just say a lawyer will look at it. The point is we have a terrible set of papers, a terrible proposal. It's out of whack. What it does is, on its face, it is intended, no insult intended, but it is intended to protect staff from the members and the directors. And that's just, I think we ought to go back to the drawing boards, and if there really is an issue, let's talk about what really matters. But when you see a set of rules that talk about following someone around to make a point, and then a lawyer is going to look at it, the lawyer should probably say, this whole thing has to be, it's like unconstitutional. Well, it isn't unconstitutional, but it may well be unenforceable. And if someone is convicted of this and winds up making a point, and I would encourage them to make a point, because that's the only way you get a matter before a judge, and that's the way you really resolve issues, before judges rather than before a kangaroo court or a Red Star chamber. You really want a judge to look at these things. If a judge looked at these things, I wouldn't want to be on the prosecuting side. And therefore, I urge us to send them, just reject it, send the matter back. I would love to participate in that type of discussion, because if there are problems, we should resolve the problems. But we're a nurturing, or we should be a nurturing community, and we shouldn't be a community whose primary harassment claims are against members harassing staff. Staff works for us. I rest.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jules. Chris, looks like you have a question or comment. Vandana?
Yes, this goes to what you had mentioned, and this is on page 7 of 18, agenda item 11C, and it's paragraph C above. It states, legal counsel reviews investigative report to confirm findings meet the legal definitions of harassment, abuse, and or intimidation. I agree with that. However, what concerns me is the sentence that comes thereafter. If the claim does not meet the definition, compliance division reviews claims for other possible violations. To me, once it's been determined that it was not harassment, abuse, or whatever, the complaint should cease. But to go on to say, well, we'll look for something else disturbs me greatly.
Okay, good, thank you. Donna had a comment?
Yeah, I would certainly agree with Director Prince's comment, but I did want to Director Zallen, appreciating your legal background and your comments. But the purpose of this is really, my understanding, and as I read it, is to show that we're in compliance with California's harassment law. I mean, we operate under California's law. We have to, we should, certainly. And the civil code that relates to harassment says, and I kind of brought it with because I figured we'd have a discussion, a course of conduct that is knowing and willful, is directed at a specific person, seriously alarms, annoys, or harasses that person, serves no legitimate purpose, would cause, and I emphasize, would cause a reasonable purpose, substantial emotional distress, and or actually does cause substantial emotional distress to the person. That's California statute. We don't have to sit and argue about that. That is what it is, and it is what we should be operating under, I would assume, which is called common courtesy and civility, which is something that I would hope we all encourage. In terms of the question, which was a good one, of would we be liable if somebody disagreed and chose to go beyond our purview and go to court? It says a reasonable person. And what that says is that's subject to interpretation. So I don't see how if something came to us and was viewed and looked at and a decision was reached that the other person or the other complaining party didn't agree with, and it went to court and the court disagreed, I can't see where we as the board or as Laguna Woods Village would be liable, because it says a reasonable person, and the judge may have a different definition of that. So nothing's perfect, and perhaps maybe it would be a cleaner proposal if it just quoted California civil law. Criminal law is another thing, and we don't deal with that. If it gets that bad, we probably have someone else in another process that can take care of it. And if I understand correctly, the intent of this is civility and just consideration of others. And so perhaps the easiest thing is just go with what California already said.
Thank you, Donna. Any others? I'll get to you in a minute. Jules, just want to make sure everybody else gets a chance to speak first. Francis, looks like you have your hand up. Can't hear you even though you're off mute.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to bring a couple of things to attention of the board and the membership. Director Salon is correct that this process already exists within your rules enforcement program. Any claims of harassment that the compliance division receives or security receives is investigated fully and brought before the board or the executive hearings committee. So this process already exists. This policy's intention is to make it globally, to bring in all three corporations together under one umbrella to deal with these escalated, elevated allegations of harassment, intimidation, and abuse. So our process, the compliance process, which the board has approved, is that we will receive the reports of harassment. We will receive the reports of alleged nuisance behavior, intimidation, all of that we receive. And our job is to investigate it to the fullest extent that we possibly can with the resources that we have. That means obtaining statements from the suspects themselves, from the victims that's involved, from any witnesses that saw the behavior or whatever the allegation is. And that is compiled together in a report for the board's consideration, for the committee's consideration. Our job, or part of the investigation, is to make sure that we give you everything we have and everything we could have. So we will offer the board the statements from both parties, from everybody involved. We also have where the perpetrator or the suspect will respond to our allegations and provide even additional statements. Those you get in this packet. So we provide everything to you so that the board and the committee could make the best choice or the best decision under the governing documents and under what all of us are governed under. So I want to make sure that the membership knows that. We provide everything to the board. And there are instances where it's a he said, she said thing, and that's where it comes up to the panel and to the people who are reviewing the case, whether does it rise to the level of violating your governing document? And if so, to what extent should the disciplinary fines be? And the fines are only a deterrent because we don't want the behavior to reoccur. And then in instances that does rise to the level of harassment, what staff is looking at is what's the intent behind it? What's the pattern that's being established? So, for example, using Director Solomon's example of the phone calls, we're service members. We are here to service community. So it's very reasonable to expect voicemails. It's very reasonable to expect emails requesting for service or requesting for whatever it may be. What's not reasonable, and that's what we look at, is what's behind that intent. To get various voicemails is reasonable. To get various voicemails that are dark in nature or are threatening in nature or specifically say they have an intent to harm staff or harm or another member, because it hasn't just been against staff, it's been against other members too, then that takes it to a whole other level. So that's what we bring forward to the boards and the executive committee. And then the policy, which is, again, similar to what you already currently have, is not just against board members towards staff. It could be member against member. It could be member against a board member, an advisor, a contractor, a guest of a resident. All of these individuals are considered in this policy. Any issues where the allegation is that staff harassed a member or a board member or an advisor, that goes to a different avenue because that's a personnel issue. But otherwise, this policy does include all those entities. So that's it. That's just what I want to share, but I'm available if the board has any more questions regarding this or the compliance process.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Jules?
Yes, thank you, Francis. You exactly made my point. The point is that every single one of the cases that I have seen do not involve any live testimony at all. All it is written statements. And written statements, you cannot determine who is telling the truth because you don't know whether the person, for example, in the case of the Hatfields and the McCoys, A claims that B called her a dirty name for which she was prosecuted. A had every reason to lie because if the officer believed her and passed it on and a harassment claim was brought, then it would harm B and it would aid A. In other words, she would have every reason to lie, and yet a case could be brought just by that. The point is that there are people, for example, Steve Leonard, who was prosecuted under current rules. He was prosecuted and found guilty by VMS, third executive committee, and the third board, relieved of all of his duties, prevented from coming into the community center, and all this happened without his knowledge.
But that's not what this is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you. That was long ago. That's not what this policy is.
It's true. It's not what the policy is. It is possible. What I'm saying is we have to go back to square one. And listen, I'm not saying that harassment is not something that we should take seriously. We should take it seriously, but we shouldn't start in the middle. What we should start with is, as Donna said, what the law is. And what she was quoting was the Code of Civil Procedure, Section 527B.6B3. And that should be the stepping off point. The stepping off point should not be too many telephone calls. The stepping off point should be the law. And then we should figure out how best to enforce it. And right now, it's being enforced by a series of rules that go way back, and it should be, we should examine the very basis for the rule and set up a rule that makes sense. But the current procedures and the current rule don't make sense. And that's why we should reject this and rethink it. And I would be happy to participate in that process.
Okay, thank you. Ira, looked like you had a comment?
I just want a clarification on page 6 of 14, agenda item 12A, under section 8B2. It says the claim will be investigated by a third party. I was wondering if you could clarify the third parties, that's all.
Yes, we would use a trained investigator to conduct the investigation, and that was the point that I was going to make. And in the process of those investigations, the option of allowing the investigator to record the proceedings is given to the person being interviewed, and more oftentimes than not, they agree to that. So we do have more than just a written statement. Thank you.
And Jovan, that was what you were, raise your hand. All right, any other comments here from the board? Looked like there was a member comment. All right, Rosemarie, it looked like you had a comment.
I'm going to try and get up.
You take your time.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I believe that a number of the board members do not understand why this process was started. And I'm not going to mention names because we're not supposed to. But third, we had a member of a board, not third, a board, who threatened other board members by putting their fist up and telling them to step outside, who chased one of the VMS directors around a supermarket yelling at her and yelling at her husband and basically threatening her, who screamed at meetings, finance meetings, et cetera, at our staff, telling them how stupid they were. These are really very serious things. And as VMS, we went to the board involved, and we had all of our information. We worked with our attorney. It took up like almost a year's worth of our time. And they didn't really want to do anything about it. They didn't really believe it, even though we had investigators, we had witnesses, et cetera. And the big part of that was it really impacted the other boards. It impacted Third, and it impacted GRF, because so much VMS time was spent on this yelling at our staff members. I mean, it was so this year, what they tried to do was put a board of peers, of their peers together, to at least get this process moving along, because we were stopped every step of the way. Third was getting pretty upset with us, and we actually made that board pay for the legal fees, because if Third had to pay for the legal fees, that would have really been a double insult. So that's why this was started. It wasn't started just because we wanted to come up with some more rules. And sometimes I get upset that we're spending so much time on it, because in all the years, I've never had anything like this happen. You know, there was just one person who acted this way, and maybe it won't happen again. So sometimes I say, you know, why are we doing all of this? We're taking more time doing it than if it doesn't happen. And hopefully it never happens again. But hopefully we can have a process in place where a person who is acting this way cannot just continue to act this way and make life miserable for the boards, for staff, and for everyone involved. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to let Director Nunez come up as well, and then we'll get back to you, Jules.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make one comment. The distinction between, and I think Director Zalin said it earlier, this is not a court of law. These are hearings, so nobody's testifying under oath. So the whole presumption of, you know, whether they are telling the truth or not. We're just getting statements, we're getting video, we're getting recordings, and they're looking at that during that procedure before these hearings. And that's a big difference because otherwise, the level that we would have to investigate and process, all this evidence and everything else, you'd have to have an evidence locker, you'd have to have all kinds of security issues developed to make sure the chain of custody was appropriate. And, we're trusting in our system because our system has worked. It's the HOA governing docs that give us authority to do what we do. And that's what they're doing. And like Francis Gomez has said earlier, this is no different. I mean, we have this ability and this function to investigate these right now. The policy is to make it so that all of us are doing the same thing, every time we do this. And of course, no process is perfect, but that's why we're here. We're trying to improve on the process, but they're not sworn under oath to testify when they're even giving testimony. And they are given testimony, and they're given that 5 minutes to give testimony, whether them or their attorneys. And so, but nobody's sworn under oath to do so.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, Jules.
Rosemary makes a good point. What is this based on? If there really are major issues, numerous repetitive problems, then we really should address it as a real problem. That's the way rules are always made by legislatures or by boards. You have a problem, you discuss it, you have this problem, you resolve the problem in this way. That's why Congress has hearings, because there is a problem and you resolve the problem by drafting legislation. If we have a harassment problem, we should draft legislation, our own legislation, to cure that problem. But right now, all we have is anecdotal evidence that somebody runs down a supermarket aisle yelling and screaming. If there is enough of that, that's a problem. But if that happens, it's a one-off. There's no reason to change our rules where there's no evidence at all that I have seen introduced that supports an extension of our harassment rules or change or suggest that we change what we consider to be harassment. We don't need an evidence locker. It would be fine if people just came in and testified. There's no problem with asking for live testimony or for asking, for example, if someone is charged with something, have them answer. Did you say this? Did you? In other words, what is at issue? The reason you have trials in civil courts and criminal courts is to try disputed facts. You're not entitled to your day in court unless there are issues, factual issues to be tried. If there are no factual issues, a judge is going to make the decision. You don't have the right to come in to testify. It's true. A trial means to try disputed facts. So what we really should, for Francis to come in and say, we give you everything, that's really a problem. Because we have had cases, without getting particular, in which the material that they give the disciplinary committee, the executive committee, scores of pages of single-spaced documents. Do they expect us to really read all this material? No. A trial, a hearing, is to try disputed facts. So what compliance is doing in this case is overwhelming us with facts that we couldn't possibly completely understand. Hundreds of pages of material come in all of our disciplinary cases. I don't think that many people actually read all that stuff. I do. And maybe that's why I'm making so much noise. The point is, hundreds of pages. We really should limit the hearing to disputed facts, not just have everything thrown at us and have us decide what is relevant and what is not relevant. That's also part of the process. We should really rethink this. And it doesn't require a year's worth of meetings. It requires a group of people sitting down and coming up with some logical provisions, a logical proposal that we can easily understand and vote on.
Okay. All right. Andy, did you say you had a comment?
I just would like to make a motion that we approve this policy to go on 28-day review.
Okay, I think that motion was already then approved. So I've been it's an important policy. I'm just trying to let everybody speak. Jim?
Yeah, in my opinion, this is basically a standard operating procedure that goes across all the boards. We already do all these things. We aren't really changing it that much. We're just making it uniform across all of the boards so that we don't have the same kind of problems we have in alterations where there's different rules for third, there's different rules for United. This way, it's one standard set of procedures that will make everything simplified, and that way we as a board don't give special consideration if we have a board member that's violating policies. United can't give special consideration to theirs. It's going to be done as a group effort so that you don't just look the other way when something's going on if it's a member of your board. And so I'm in favor of this because it sets a standard operating procedure.
Okay, thanks. Ira?
I don't have any real further comments except for I forgot to bring up before a little typo on the staff report on page 1 of 14, third paragraph under discussion. It says the motion passed 7-2 with directors Bada, Cook, Laws, and Lewis opposed. That should be 7-4. That's all.
All right. Ralph, did you have your hand up?
I just one comment. I like the idea of a trained observer or trained third party, but no matter what is evaluated here, a term that I'm sure that Jules is familiar with is the reasonable man concept. All of these will be considered under the idea of a reasonable man. And it's different views of the reasonable man that make for a lot of appeals in the courts of law. I might be different than a reasonable attorney, however, but nonetheless, that is to be the primary thought in evaluating these things.
Yeah. Thanks, Ralph. All right. Francis, you have something more to add?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple more things, and mostly to respond to Director Salon, which I appreciate your perspective and I appreciate the opportunity to respond. For hearings, for disciplinary hearings, the purpose of the disciplinary hearing is to invite the person that's alleged to be in violation of your rules, of your governing documents. So they are given the opportunity to come before the board, come before the committee to present their case or review whatever is presented. They are present when staff gives a rundown of the report, so there's no surprises. They also get all our letters and all the history with it, so they are in the know of why they're being called in the first place to a hearing. Now, the matter of the victim or the witnesses being invited to come into the hearing, that has happened in the past. It's not standard practice because otherwise you're having an hour-long hearing, which, as you know, are already a long time. So, but depending on the details and depending on what's being brought forward to the board or the executive committee, we do open that invitation to the reporting parties to have their opportunity to speak with the board. Most often than not, they don't accept that invitation because they don't want to deal with it any more than they have to. So they'll send in statements aside from whatever they've given security. And that is part of your packet. Your packet, again, depending on the case and the details of the case, can get very long. And there was one instance, which this committee might remember, where the suspect gave us almost like a 500-page document. We're required to bring that forward to you. We don't want the argument or the complaint that staff is withholding any evidence or any paperwork or anything like that. Not at all. Our job is to bring it forward to you. And the reports are set up so that when I tell the team, it's like peeling the layers of the onion. What are the main key points? And then adding more information as we go further to provide a more effective or make it easier at your hearings. So our reports have our summary, have a discussion item. And then if you go further down, it has a list of all the attachments detailed on what they are and the date that was received. Further along down there, you get the chronology of every activity that happened with this case, whether it was a phone call, a letter, a security report, whatever it may be, it's included. And behind that, you actually have all those documents. So it does sometimes lend to a long report, but that's for your review. That's for you to be able to make the best decision in whatever case it may be. And then lastly, this is the first time that I hear that the team is not providing reports. I review them before they're released. I'm the last level of review. So Director Salon, I'm more than happy to meet with you and discuss them more in detail offline and see what your concerns are, and I'm more than happy to help with them. And that's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. All right, any last questions, comments before we call this for a vote? I don't see any. Paul, are you going to put this thing up for us to vote automatically so that people on Zoom can see how we voted? And since it's kind of far away, all right. So we're now being asked to vote to put this policy on 28-day notification. And go for it.
Director Lewis, what is your vote?
Yes.
President Laws, what is your vote?
Yes.
Director Rain Zostek, what is your vote?
Yes.
Yeah, Kush, you're not voting correct, or are you trying to vote?
I'm trying to abstain.
Trying to abstain. You abstained, so you were successful. It did. Oh.
It went up there for a second.
It was there. Try again.
Try again?
Yeah, just one time. There you go. Oh, it popped and went back. So, I used abstain. It looks like you already did. All right, so the motion passes, 7 yeses, 2 noes, 1 abstain. Okay. All right. Yeah, there was some comments about some potential tweaks, so I will work with Siobhan and the others to work to get those into the new updated policy. As Siobhan mentioned, United didn't approve this, so it'll probably come around again in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully minor modifications versus major, which would require us to put it on 28-day review again, but we'll see how that progresses. So thank you all. Good lively discussion. Thanks, Francis, for joining. All right. And I'll move on to agenda item 12B. It's to vote on whether or not to approve including the deactivation of cable and internet services as a potential action for all disciplinary actions. If you recall, the board voted to put this out for 28-day member review during last month's board meeting. So today we'll be voting on whether or not to finally approve this resolution. So Chris, if you could update us on this one.
By way of background, on May 16, 2017, the Third Laguna Hills Mutual, or Third, Board of Directors, or Board, established Resolution 03-1749, deactivation of cable internet services at a delinquent members unit. The current policy only allows for the board to hold a disciplinary hearing and suspend cable internet service for delinquent accounts only. On November 7th, 2017, the Golden Rain Foundation, or GRF, Board of Directors, or Board, approved Resolution 90-1738, suspend cable internet in the event of a disciplinary action, giving authority to the Housing Mutual to suspend cable internet service for disciplinary cases. On May 24, 2022, the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee discussed including suspension of cable internet services as a possible disciplinary action for matters brought before the board. And the staff recommends the amendment to the resolution, which reads, whereas Laguna Hills Mutual or Third desires to strengthen disciplinary actions, and whereas the board recognizes the need to expand the option to deactivate cable internet service to all disciplinary matters when cases are brought for a disciplinary hearing, and whereas the GRF board adopted Resolution 90-1738, which GRF authorizes Third to take disciplinary action against a member, which includes but is not limited to the suspension of the member's right to use the cable internet services. Now therefore be it resolved on August 16th, 2022, that the Board of Directors hereby approves the deactivation of cable internet services as a disciplinary action, and resolve further that Resolution 03-1749, adopted May 16th, 2017, is hereby suspended and canceled, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
All right. Thanks again, Chris. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve this resolution? Jim moves, Ira seconds. Any questions or comments about this? Ira?
Not so much about this. On page 1 of 8, under the endorsement to the board, near the end where the word expend, I think that should be expand to rather than expend. Under Director Prince made a motion to amend the deactivation of cable internet services for a delinquent members unit. Instead of the word to expend, it should be to expand to. I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for or not. I just want to clarify.
I don't know that it matters, but it probably should be expand to. I think this is just more the high-level suggestion, heading summary for the board.
Okay.
But I don't think it's
because
part of the
somewhere
record.
else it said expand to.
Yes, and it is expanding to.
Yeah.
So today we can only use this as first delinquencies. Okay, but thanks for that. Thanks for reading every word. Appreciate it. I've heard some of us don't do that. Any other questions, comments? All right, Paul, any member comments on this one?
No member comments.
Okay,
on this item.
I just want to remember to ask that. All right, it looks like Paul's going to put this up for us to vote again.
Director Lewis, what is your vote?
Yes.
President Laws, what is your vote?
Yes.
Director Raines Zostek, what is your vote?
Yes.
We're waiting on Director Frankel.
Yes.
All right. All right, so this motion passes, 10 votes yes, 0 votes no, 0 abstains. Thank you, board. We'll move on now to agenda item 13, new business. So there's 4 items in front of us in new business today. First is agenda item 13A, an update to one of our older policies regarding which board members can vote during committee meetings. Today, the board will be voting on whether or not to put this resolution forward for 28-day member review and comment. I'm not sure, is anyone from staff going to talk about this? And if not,
Blasilda.
Blasilda will. Great, thank you, Blasilda.
Good morning, Board. So at present, so this is regarding the board member participation in committees. At present, any board member may attend, participate, and vote in any committee meeting, even if they have not been assigned to it. The purpose of amending the board member participation on committees is to provide clarification on when a board member is attending committee meetings, such as board members who attend committee meetings will be permitted to participate and vote if a quorum is required for the committee meeting. On July 27th, the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee reviewed the board member participation in committees, and the motion was to accept the changes to the current policy to clarify that if there is a need for a quorum in the committee, that the chair can determine which directors are going to participate in the committee on that day to meet the quorum and to be able to vote as well.
Okay, so again, not just any director can vote on anything. They have to essentially be chosen by the chair
Correct.
in order to participate in voting.
Correct.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Any questions for Blasilda? Okay. No, nothing for, you have something for Blasilda?
Yes, I did, and you may have said it, and I may have misread it. So this is for any committee, third committees or GRF committee?
It would be for any third committee because it's a third policy.
Okay, so this does not affect,
GRF, no.
Okay.
And just want to confirm, it's just if they need to make it a quorum.
Correct.
Otherwise, that member is not part of the committee for
That
voting
direct,
purposes.
correct.
Thanks. Okay. You have no question for Blasilda, right? You just want to talk about others. So I just want to make sure I can let Blasilda sit down if she would like to. Thanks, Blasilda. Appreciate that. So before I get to your comments, can I get a motion to proceed with putting this resolution forward for 28-day member review? Jim moves. Ira seconds. Okay, thank you. Jules, you have a question or comment?
Actually, I have a motion. I want to amend the proposal because it seems to have gone farther than I remember the committee, the Resident Policy Committee, deciding. This, as I recall, what we decided to do at the committee was to simply remove the members' right to vote, but not to participate. This one involves both voting and participation. That's not what we agreed to. We simply agreed to change the rule so that we took out any member's right to vote, but not to participate.
So I believe you may have missed a meeting, Jules. So the first meeting, we talked about some things, the first resident policy compliance meeting back in June.
Yes.
Yeah, the end of June. And then at the end of July, I believe you missed that meeting and we talked about it further and we got to this point. Okay, so you may be unhappy with this one. Okay. Does anybody want to second Jules' proposed amendment to the motion? Do you want to second it, or you have a comment?
No, I just a comment.
Okay, you don't want to second it yet? Okay, so not second it. Go ahead, Ralph. Now I'll let you.
Like a comment, my understanding is if you don't have a quorum, you can't even have the meeting.
That's right. So the intent would be to fill the quorum if for instance, somebody, an alternate didn't show up as they were supposed to, and you couldn't have the meeting, but there was another director sitting there or multiple directors sitting there, the chair can fill it in. Yeah, that's correct. That's what this is intended to be. Okay, so thanks.
Just a clarification, it does not prohibit a board member from participating as a member of the committee, but they could participate as a member of the community.
That's right. That's right. And you've seen me do that often. So I attend many meetings where I'm not part of the committee, but I have questions and comments, so I'm really representing myself and my other members. Thanks. Jim?
But in this case, they're making up the quorum. They should be participating in the meeting.
Yes, that's right. So this will allow that to happen, yes. Hopefully it's not confusing to everybody. Okay. Jules?
Well, it is confusing to me. For example, what happens if someone is an alternate on a committee like the disciplinary committee and there is a quorum? Does that mean the alternate is thrown out of the meeting?
That means the alternate is, so the chair makes the decision as to whether the alternate can even attend. If the alternate doesn't have the right to even attend just because they're an alternate. I know in some meetings, because you were new to the board, you were invited to attend because you're an alternate to make sure that you understood the process. But going forward, whether you'll continue to be allowed to attend those meetings if there's already a quorum since you're an alternate, that's up to the chair.
How about a member who is not an alternate on the disciplinary committee? Can they attend?
No, because the disciplinary is closed. So this is mainly for open meetings. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. All right, any other questions, comments? Chris?
Shall I read it?
Did I not let you read it already?
I don't believe so.
I'm losing track. Why don't you go ahead and read this for us, Chris, just so that we can... Sorry, yes, yes, okay.
Whereas board members are appointed to committees to carry out the purpose of the board as specified in the committee charters. And whereas at present, board members are allowed to attend committee meetings and have the right to participate and vote regardless of assignment to the committee. And whereas the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee recognizes the need to clarify when board members are permitted to vote and participate at committees that they are not assigned for. Now therefore, be it resolved, September 20th, 2022, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby allows board members who attend a committee meeting to participate and vote as a committee member only if a quorum for the committee is required. If there are more directors in attendance than needed to fill the quorum, the chair will select the director or directors to establish the quorum requirement per the committee's charter, and resolve further Resolution M30371 adopted October 21st, 2003 is hereby suspended and canceled, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for reminding me to get that read. Appreciate that. All right. Any final questions, comments regarding this motion before we put it to a vote? Hearing none, Paul, can you please? All right, please vote.
Director Lewis. Oops, sorry. Director Lewis, what is your vote?
Yes.
President Laws, your vote, please.
Yes.
And Director Rain Zosek, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, voting is done. Motion passes. 9 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain. So this resolution is now on 28-day review, and we'll talk about it again next board meeting and vote whether or not to finalize it based upon any further comments we receive. 13B is to vote on whether or not to approve the transferring of the 2021 operating deficit from the unappropriated operating fund to the 2022 operating fund. This request was approved by the Finance Committee earlier this month, and today we'll be voting on whether or not to put this resolution forward for 28-day member review and comment. Jose, do you have any opening comments for us regarding this resolution?
No additional comments other than what you just read. This is something that's been included in the budget, so we've taken this into consideration. And also for the board's edification, we have done some year-end projections. This is pretty standard. It's what we do with our operating deficits or our surpluses is we net them against the unappropriated expenditures fund. And we are projecting a surplus in the current year that's roughly $1.2 million. So this should offset by next year.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Jose before I ask Chris to read the resolution? Okay, thank you, Jose. Appreciate the brief update. And Chris.
Okay. Excuse me. Whereas the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Operating Statement as of December 31, 2021 reflected an operating deficit net of depreciation in the amount of $1,276,497 due to unforeseen increases in property insurance premiums, offset by savings in employee compensation and legal fees. Now therefore, be it resolved, September 20th, 2022, that the Board of Directors hereby authorizes a transfer in the amount of $1,276,497 from the from the unappropriated operating fund to the operating fund due to the 2021 operating fund deficit. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to proceed with putting this resolution forward for 28-day member review and comment? Donna moves.
Second.
Actually, it was approved by the Finance Committee, wasn't it?
It was.
In which case, it's a motion from Finance.
Yes. Yeah.
It's already ready to go. I think if it comes from committee, it doesn't need us to make a motion.
Okay. Yes. Okay, sorry,
right?
we're going to vote on it anyway. So Donna moved to
Jim second.
to receive and Jim seconds. Okay. Any questions, comments on this? So yes, the board has seen this before. All right. Okay. Any member comments? It was 13C, correct?
B, 13.
No member comments for 13B.
Okay. It's the next one we might have. Okay, thank you. It's now time to vote. Kind of sound like Jeff Probst on Survivor. It's now time to vote.
Director Lewis, your vote, please.
Yes.
President Laws, your vote.
Yes?
Director Raines Osek, your vote.
Yes.
All right, this motion passes. 10 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstains. So this is now on 28-day review. We'll talk about it again next month. Moving on to agenda item 13C. It's for us to vote on whether or not to approve a resolution to limit the watering of exterior house plants from hose bibs to only Wednesdays and Sundays. This request was approved by both the Water Conservation Subcommittee as well as the Landscape Committee before coming to the full board. Today we'll be voting as to whether or not to put this resolution forward for 28-day member review and comment. Kurt, it looks like you're here to share some opening comments for us. Thanks.
Yes, this resolution just follows the one that the board approved last month, reducing irrigation use. So this is just to sort of head off residents subverting those water use restrictions by watering themselves. The board has talked recently, or the committees at least, about how do we keep residents from making up that water use, especially through hose bibs, which is potable water, which no matter where you are in the village, whether you have recycled water or potable water as irrigation, the water that comes out of your hose bibs is potable water, which is the most valuable water we have and the one that we really need to restrict the use of most. So we looked at different ways of what was excessive water use, and that's a very hard thing to define. And we looked at the way some of the other water districts in the state are handling the water use restrictions, and a lot of those are restricting water use to 2 days a week. So both committees agreed that restricting water use, outdoor water use from hose bibs to 2 days a week would go along with what a lot of the state is doing, and which would help Third Mutual reduce their potable water use for illicit irrigation use outside.
Okay. Thank you, Kurt. Any questions for Kurt before we have Chris read the resolution and talk about it amongst ourselves? All right, Kurt, thanks. You may want to stick around, just unmute if you could. Thanks. Chris?
Okay, outside plant watering restrictions. Whereas July 28, 2022, the Water Conservation Subcommittee recognized that the state of California is experiencing record drought conditions, requiring parts of Southern California to reduce exterior irrigation water use. And whereas exterior water sources available to residents in Third Mutual are potable water accessed through hose bibs on the exterior of the units. And whereas at this time, state and local mandates apply to potable water. And whereas the Water Conservation Subcommittee determined that members and residents in Third Mutual must limit exterior watering of outside plants with potable water from exterior mounted hose bibs using a hose or other methods. Now, therefore, be it resolved on September 20th, 2022, that members and residents within Third Mutual must limit watering of outside plants using potable water from hose bibs to Wednesdays and Sundays. And resolve further, this resolution shall become in full force and effect on August 16th, 2022. And resolve further, that officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution as written.
Thank you. I think that resolve further date should be September, but versus today, but that's okay. Can I get a motion to put this forward for 28 days? Kush moves, Donna seconds. All right. Any questions, comments from the third board members?
Yeah, I'd like to close a loophole that we have in this. Basically, add the word must limit exterior watering of outside personal plants, and then add a sentence after exterior mounted hose bibs using a hose or other methods. No watering of common area is permitted at any time from exterior mounted hose bibs. That way, it covers people watering their turf, watering their shrubs that are taken care of by our landscaping division.
Okay, so you essentially have an amended motion? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add, to close that loophole.
Okay, Donna's okay, Kush?
Absolutely
You okay with this
I
amended motion?
support
Okay.
that, yes.
Okay, great.
Could I ask?
Yes, please.
Could you repeat what you're amending? I didn't
Sure,
write it.
sure. Basically, it's under the whereas section. The second line down, it says Third Mutual must limit exterior watering of outside, and I want to add the word personal plants with their potable water. And then at the end where it says, after using a hose or other methods, add the sentence, no watering of common area is permitted at any time from exterior mounted hose bibs.
Yeah, I think those things should be in the, now therefore, it be it resolved section as well.
Wherever it needs to be.
Wherever it goes.
Make sense to you?
Yes.
Or do you?
Yeah, I just want to close that loophole
Okay.
so people don't start watering their lawns if they so desire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, as they start potentially turning brown, that's good loophole, thanks. Any questions, comments?
A comment.
I have a comment.
Yeah, I would just like a clarification for our members as well as those on the board who are not either on landscape or water committee where we've discussed it. And on the outside, of course, we speak of it's important to recognize that that hose bib isn't recycled water, that it is potable water. What we don't really ever talk about is where does our recycled water come from? And our recycled water comes from the water that goes down the drains. The water you use in your manor, no matter where you are in the village, actually, even the areas that don't have recycled water, that water is what ultimately makes up our recycled water. So when we do excessive watering, and in this water crisis, anything almost is excessive, when we do excessive watering, we are actually depriving our source of recycled water as well, because that water coming from the hose bib is potable water, it's going in the lawn, and it's gone. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that, because it is something to think about every time we use that hose bib. It's important. And the other reason for having the Wednesday and Sunday, having just 2 days a week is, I don't know how many people, we used to just kind of water the lawn, especially when we lived in Illinois where it rained a whole lot. That was almost therapeutic. You'd stand outside and water. So it's a way of putting watering in your consciousness. It's not, gee, I think I'll go out and water the plants right now. They look a little tired. If it can only be Wednesday and Sunday, it just raises the awareness, which is so important. So not only does it save water, not only does it help preserve when we are using potable water, that it's going to go down the drain in our houses, in our manors, instead of out onto the lawn, but hopefully it raises the consciousness as well. So I just want to make sure that our members as well as our board understood that, and I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thanks. Chris, did you have a comment or question?
I have a way to say that we are doing something ahead of what the federal government just announced, and I'm going to read these 3 lines over here. The federal government announces new water cuts for the Southwest as the Colorado River plummets into an even deeper shortage. So congratulate all of us that we are way ahead and thinking all about it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
They probably heard about our resolution.
Probably did. All right, any other questions, comments? Right, was there a member comment?
Okay, yes. We have Mr. and Mrs. Tom and Lynn Finkkiller. Their comment is, we are supportive of the plan limiting water from the hose bibs to Wednesday and Sunday. The drought is serious and we must take more steps to address it. End of comment.
Thank you. All right.
And just to verify, to clarify, because I don't want to miss it, anyone using a hose outside has to have that automatic shut-off at the end of it. That's actually required by El Toro Water District and by the state. That you cannot just have the hose with water running off the end. It must have that automatic closer so that when you lay it down or stop doing what you're doing, it shuts it off.
That's a good clarification. I didn't know that. All right. Any other comments, or are we ready to vote?
Yeah, and that's not part of the resolution because it's part of the mandate.
Understood. All right. Okay, so we're voting now on this updated resolution, kind of the tweaks that Ira mentioned. It's now time to vote.
Director Lewis, your vote?
Yes.
President Lez, your vote?
Yes.
Director Rains-Ostek, your vote?
Yes.
And we are waiting on Director Frankel.
Okay. All right, the motion is passed, 10-0-0. All right, so this is also on 28-day member review time, and we'll resurrect it again next board meeting. All right, thank you, Kurt. You can go back to your day job now. All right, agenda item 13D is for the board to vote on an updated GRF committee assignments. So real quickly, I think this August GRF meeting a couple weeks ago today, they added a new compliance ad hoc committee and asked that it be filled by 2 members of third board or 2 seats to represent third board. Annie and myself are planning to fill those 2 seats. So we're voting on that. So any questions, comments before we vote?
Which committee is that?
This compliance ad hoc, so page 3 of 4, a new committee, help them with their compliance processes a little bit. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll vote one more time, Paul. I think this one will be fairly quick.
To the motion.
Do we need a motion? Sorry. It's been a long morning already. Annie moves? Kush seconds. All right. Now, so yes, I guess you need that, don't you?
Director Lewis, your vote?
Yes.
President Laws, your vote?
Yes.
And Director Rains-Ostek, your vote?
Yes.
Director McCary? I can punch it in for you if you want.
Okay. No. All right, so this motion passes as well. Updated committee assignments are good. 10-0-0, and we're now done with new business and moving on to our monthly third mutual committee reports.
Mr. President?
Oh,
If I might have my two committee reports first, because I have to excuse myself to go pick my wife up from her doctor's appointment.
okay, I can make that happen. So Donna, you're going to just have to wait a little bit.
The world will have to wait, what can I tell you?
All right, I'm trying to find your, so it'd be architectural standards and control. Okay, yes, architectural.
We've had two meetings since our last board meeting. The meeting of July 25th, we were able to, we're working on minimizing the number of mutual consents that manor alteration needs to approve. For example, water heater replacements, which are not visible from the outside of the manor, but still require a city permit. These items are being moved to a consent permitless item. And so that's one of the things we're moving forward to try and make things move more efficiently. We do have some temporary staff that we brought in to deal with shortages. Abraham Ballesteros has replaced Richard De La Fuente, and so we have that position filled. We are also moving to get more and more over-the-counter variances. What that consists of is that variances of a same or similar complexion in what the variance is, once it's done, they may be handled over-the-counter by staff, thereby also decreasing the time for variances up to 6 more weeks. So it could actually, with what we've already implemented, by having the ACSC committee being able to approve variances, that lessened the time period by about 6 weeks. This may lessen it by about another 6 weeks, which overall could lessen the variance process by about 3 months. So that's where we're moving forward. We also had a position where we had somebody had placed brick pavers in a common area, which affects no one's use of common area, other than it helps with any kind of drainage problems, any kind of erosion problems. So along with that, we are looking towards allowing brick pavers to remain in place at the resale. It's because, again, it's providing a service not only for the member, but for the community as a whole, not to have to deal with problems created by runoff and deterioration of the soil and foundation of the buildings. So that was the July 25th meeting. We had a special meeting on August 8th because we don't want to let these variances stack up. We had 3 variances that were approved in that. 2 of those 3 variances were in reference to exterior doors and exactly about exterior door color. So along with that, we've looked at developing a revised standard 10 for the doors, exterior swing, where the new standards would incorporate the new materials, new construction materials, new composites, not be so limiting in what the actual doors that are part of the industry now. Same with colors. We're looking at trying to expand the color palette, which we've already expanded in our painting project with the new color palettes for doors that weren't formally part of Standard 10. So again, that's all in the works. We're trying to move forward. We're trying to keep things so that we can limit the amount of times, work out some of the bugs in our reporting system, and able to track the mutual consent. We're also working with the city because there's a lot of confusion about the word permit. And people, when they get a mutual consent permit, it's a misnomer. It's a mutual consent approval. We do not technically issue permits. The city issues permits. And so I was just at the city yesterday at the planning department. While I was there for 15 minutes, two people from Laguna Woods Village came in, either they or their contractors, I don't know who which, but they were saying, well, I already have a permit. They said, no, you don't have a city permit, you have a mutual consent. So that word permit, we're looking at getting out of our literature so that it limits the confusion. We're also looking at revising the final steps page of when you're getting your mutual consent, because it also has some information that can be misconstrued to where you think you have a permit, you start work, you ultimately end up having to go to the city, they find out you've been working without a city permit, and you're fined, and problems occur monetarily for you because you in good faith thought you had a permit, but you didn't. So all those things are being worked on, trying to be resolved, and trying to move alterations forward. Just as VMS made their report, we're working in conjunction with them to try and get these things happening.
Okay, so Danny has a question for you. Good work, thanks.
Absolutely. Braden, thank you for that report. So my question is, and actually I just had this thought, once all of these processes are refined the way you talked about them, my idea was maybe a flow chart or something for residents so that they would understand exactly the way you just articulated it.
Yes, and that would be the goal, to have a sequence of events that can be followed. And in that, you'd also have to have, there's things that we can give mutual consent approval for that don't require city permits. And so that also has to be in that flow chart or final steps. I don't like the term final steps. I would prefer it to be the steps, which in essence would be that flow chart.
Great, thank you.
And just
I was going to go Donna first and then Kush.
Just a quick question. The flow chart and the process that you're talking about, that will be visible on the internet in the portal so people could track that? Or is this not?
When we get to that point, I'm sure it will be published there, but the main thing is it'll be published in the mutual consent handouts that are given to contractors and members when they want to do
Very good.
an alteration.
Yeah, Kush.
I don't have a comment, Jim, but I want to commend you and your team for getting and shaking this whole thing up and making progress to the point where people will really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now if I can go on with my second.
And that's the Disaster Preparedness Task
Yes.
Force? That's a GRF.
My GRF committee, there it is. Okay, the GRF committee met on July 26th. The reports were given by the different sub-boards and committees and everything. But the main thing that was discussed, or main thing that we had happen is Cody De Leon was the one running the meeting from staff. They introduced Paul Mathias, who is our new environmental health and safety person. And he has an extensive background, firefighter, California Division of Forestry, Newport Beach Fire Department, hazmat, battalion chief, urban search and rescue. So that's the caliber of people that we have coming in to be working with that. I don't have my list here when the next meeting is. You have that in front of you, Mark?
No.
No, it's here.
Disaster preparedness, next meeting will be on September 27th at 9:30.
Thank you so much. And that concludes mine, and
I just had one additional comment because I just recently signed up as a clubhouse coordinator. And what Chief Eric Nunez made an announcement that, okay, thank you. So that he was making it his priority to bring together the good neighbor captains and the clubhouse coordinators to make sure that we can address these issues, and he's making that his highest priority. So as a clubhouse coordinator, I just thought that was, I was really pleased that he made this his priority.
And can I ask, are they still looking for good neighbor captains? Because that appeal went out several months
Yes.
ago. Is that still? Okay.
All right, thanks, Jim.
And with that, I'll excuse myself.
Okay, see you a little later, I hope. All right, and now back to Donna and a report of the Finance Committee.
Yeah, and I think we've all been here a little while, so the Finance Committee report is hopefully going to be fun, but you want to stretch a little bit before we do that? I may even need it as well, just to kind of get everybody awake and alert and ready for what actually is a very good report. So we're going to start with, as we always do, the very first slide is just what came in, what went out, and what's left over. And assessment revenue and non-assessment revenue you can see in front of you. Total revenue, $21,774,000 against expenses of $16,842,000, leaving us at this moment, meaning at the end of June 30th, leaving us with $4,931,000 favorable to in and out. That's good and bad news. So let's look and see where that money's going and why it hasn't gone as we expected. So let's go on to the next slide. And here we start really just honing down and we look at the operating income. This is very important because this is our day-to-day money. This is what we have to be able to function. And again, you can see, although the assessment the revenue in total was $20,707,000. The assessment part of that is $14,301,000. And again, the non-assessment revenue slightly smaller than the overall statement, although a great deal of that non-assessment revenue does go to the operating fund. Again, total revenue is in excess of expenses, and therefore, at the end of June, we had an operating surplus of $1,453,000. Moving right along.
To which slide? The numbers you were mentioning, I didn't see on the slide we were looking at. So which slide are you moving to? It's just
Did that page turn too fast? Good heavens. I was looking at the screen. I'm operating income.
Okay.
Yeah. At $1,453,000 extra. I like the other one better. I like the $4 million extra. Okay. So as we go along, we now look at our finances in relationship to budget. The first column, the actuals, is exactly what you saw in that very first slide. It's what came in, what went out, and we look at it compared to budget. The actuals in terms of assessments are exactly what we anticipated. The non-assessment revenue was slightly higher. That's expected to be slightly off because non-assessment revenue includes things like permit fees, and you can't always tell exactly how many of those will come in. So we had a variance of total revenue of $21,000. We'll look at that again. And if we look against expenses, that's where we see that net revenue, which you saw in the first slide, of $4,931,000, we had budgeted for $1,201,000. So our variance, we are certainly well ahead in terms of the plus column than we anticipated being. The question is, of course, why? And a lot of that has to do with shortage of staff. It's just everything we've talked about at all of our meetings all the way through. So let's kind of look and see where some of that is. My favorite slide when it's all green. These are our variances, and green means in our favor. They are more than we had budgeted. The biggest one by far is outside services. And that's good news and bad news. The bad news is work didn't get done. A lot of this had to do with lower than expected spending on moisture intrusion projects, but that's because those projects just couldn't get done. It's not that they aren't needed, and it is the potential we are hoping to meet budget by the end of the year because it means we will have gotten those projects done. So that's a big part of that. And we have a shortage of crews. And so again, not paying employees because they aren't there. Insurance, you already heard, was favorable in the president's report, that the insurance quote came in lower than feared. And I think feared is a good word for it since it's such a big part of our budget. And so that was also favorable by $630,000. Employee compensation, again, favorable, but primarily because of open positions rather than anything else. And legal fees were favorable by $167,000 due to less demand for legal services. And so that was good. As we move on, and I'm kind of partial to these pie charts because I think they show it so well. This shows where our non-assessment revenue comes from. And you can see that chargeable services is a good, just about a third of our non-assessment revenue, followed closely by permit fees and lease processing fees, which combined almost equal chargeable services. And then things like laundry and resale. And that's, of course, why that non-assessment revenue that we talked about earlier isn't always exactly where budget is because you can't anticipate every single one of those expenses down to the penny. But it does give you a good picture of where those revenues come from, and that was $1,066,940. If we move on to the next, we look at our expenses in much the same way. And you can just see that a very large piece of the pie is employee compensation and related at 40% of our total expenses. Insurance, a very close second at 23%, but we were happy it wasn't greater. Utilities, and we will be hearing more about utilities as rates are changing, and those are totally beyond our control in some ways, but residents, of course, using water can change some of that. And then outside services. So it just gives you an idea of where those expenses come from. And our total expenses were $16,842,000 plus $420. So coming near the end of that finance report, of the broad report, we look now, moving away from operating over to the non-operating fund balances. And those are replacement funds, the Garden Villa Recreation Room Fund, the Disaster Fund, the Unappropriated Expenditures Fund, otherwise known as the Contingency Fund, that money that's there for expenses we weren't anticipating. And we go across the line, you see totals. If you look from the top row and check down on the bottom, you will see that every single fund has more money than it did at the beginning of the year, which is very, very nice, with the exception of the Garden Villa Recreation Room Fund. That one has dropped a little, and that's it's this tiny, tiny fund, but it's an important one, and there is a 25-cent increase for those in Garden Villas that will be going to that fund in next year's budget. To hopefully keep those rec rooms in the kind of condition they're in. They're well used and well appreciated. And so that's the only one that was not growing, and we hope to see that grow next year. So moving right on, same thing, except in a bar graph for those of you who prefer that. And it is kind of nice to see that certainly the replacement funds are growing, which we need them to do. The disaster fund also looking fairly good, especially since we no longer do have our earthquake insurance coming, or earthquake coverage, I should say. We had no insurance when that fund was established. Now we do have earthquake insurance, so we can have a little lower total and still be okay. The blue bar at the almost top is the unappropriated expenditures, and that's looking kind of nice and solid and steady. And the itty-bitty bar, which we hope next year will actually be more visible, is the Garden Villa Recreation Fund. So you can just kind of see where those amounts are in relationship to each other. And then the last thing, which has a new component you can't see right here, this is just the resale history. And as you can see, there's always that lull. Early in the year, resales have been robust, and the year-to-date average resale price has been $532,029, compared to the year previously, and a great deal difference from the year before that. We were asked to look not just at the average, which is the mean, which is what we've always reported, but to take a look at the median as well. And our accounting department folks were wonderful, and they did that for us. And what is interesting is that in the months where there aren't what I would call outliers, which were those homes that are in excess of $1 million, that are sort of off the usual, what we'd call the usual price range scale. In the months where we don't see sales of individual manors over $1 million, the median and the mean are almost the same. They're very, very close. And in the months, good example, we have in May, the mean was 545,195, and the median was 455,750. I mean, very, very close. But in the month of April, where we had 6 units, 6 manors sold in excess of $1 million, the mean, which we've always reported, of 630,767, against the median being the number exactly in the middle, $470,000. So what's interesting, the grand total, when you put it all together and blend the months that had a lot of outliers and very few of them or none, you get a better picture, because when you average it all out over the year, you don't see that big a difference. The average since the beginning of the year has been just under $524,000 if you figure everything in, and the median $438,000. So there is a difference. Again, it's those big months that made the difference. So hopefully you've enjoyed that edition of kind of looking at the difference between the mean and the median. And as we finish, I just need to do part 2, because we are in budget season. And so everybody take a deep breath and another little stretch. But very quickly, just wanted to share with you, you already heard that with incredible effort by staff, by the board, by everybody involved, by all those folks you see working around the village and in the building when you come in, it looks like Third Mutual's monthly assessment for 2023 will be unchanged from 2022. And that's just incredible. And so I wanted to share with you, because last Friday we did get version 3 of the budget. And so we're kind of, in the home stretch. It will be brought to the board in September, at the third Tuesday of September. We encourage everybody to be here and be able to hear that, where it'll be brought to the board for acceptance of our 2023 budget. We don't anticipate any changes. So just very quickly wanted to share with you as we move on some of the things that have to get taken into account and what this process actually entailed and what you all can maybe do to help us out through that process. What we can't control, inflation now is 9.1%. That is what it is. And so we do our best, but everything we do, whether it's paying salaries or purchasing items, everything is affected by that. We certainly can't do much about regulations, especially those related to organic waste. We're going to look at these kind of individually in a second. Insurance rate increases, the property evaluation by our insurers, utility rate increases that again are totally beyond our control. Remembering usage of the utilities is within our control. The rates are not. And salaries because of such things as minimum wage increases. So just kind of quickly, and this is in the agenda packet, and so people can reference this, so we don't have to spend a lot of time looking at it. This is estimated. We don't know if this is what will happen, but just to remind you that organic recycling charges are really controlled by the city. We have absolutely no say in it. Our only say in it is as if what we as residents do in terms of recycling our organic waste. If we recycle enough, our costs will be lower. If we don't, we will be penalized. So this is just an estimate, but certainly in 2023, there is that potential of it going up. The next one, again, just for your background, we're not going to go in depth into it, but this is what's happened to the insurance industry over the past few years. We kind of coasted along for many years, and then there were all the hurricanes. Harvey, Irma, Maria, the California wildfires, all of that starting in 2017 with no relenting and just getting worse and worse. And around between 2019 and 20, the insurance industry said, wait a minute, we're a profit insurance company. We need to make some money here. And they were getting hit very hard. And so instead we got hit very hard, and the consumer. And I'm sure everybody has noticed their own insurance rates going up. So that's just to give you something to look at later. The reevaluation by the insurers at this point you're well familiar with, but again, just wanted to have the packet be complete and what we can do to help control costs. Yes, there is something we can do. Be involved, attend committee and mutual meetings, and we have advisors to our committees and we thank them. Be informed, the town hall sessions, the fourth Wednesday, Clubhouse 2, read the breeze, keep up with what's in the village emails, and the President's Weekly Wednesday emails, which are always informative. And the last one, just kind of as a plea, consider, if you're not using Easy Pay, please consider using it. Every time the mutual has to process checks, there is a cost that we have to incur. And any members who are automatically having the money for your monthly maintenance, monthly assessment taken out of your checking account, and you set up the amount, if there's a change in the monthly assessment, such as the one we're anticipating of $381 coming next year from GRF, you would have to change that amount or you're going to start getting notices that you're not sending in enough money if you let it go. Whereas if you use Easy Pay, it is the right amount is automatically taken out. And we hear from lots of folks, especially those who own 2 units and aren't using Easy Pay. They didn't adjust for that new rate increase on their own. And so things happen. So please, it saves the mutual money and it saves you a lot of aggravation because it just happens all on its own. And with that, that is the biggest financial report you've had.
All right.
But a good one. So.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Appreciate that. All right. What's new with the third communication committee? Annie?
The Third Communications Committee, which is a quarterly meeting, last met in July, so the next meeting is scheduled for October 12th at 1:30 in the Willow Room.
Okay. Thank you. Third Maintenance and Construction Committee, Ralph?
Thank you. The last meeting of the third M&C committee was on July 7 of this year. We can discuss the procedure for hearing member disputes regarding certain charges. We'd been hearing before them, hearing them before the whole M&C committee. However, our third rules require establishing a subcommittee to do the hearing. After a brief discussion, the committee decided to follow those rules. Amazing. We've heard our first case shortly after that. The committee discussed the common area planner in building 2369, which had leaked into adjacent manor 2 times. And yet there was no other report of such leaking of these. These are the in the certain 3-story buildings. There's like a gangway down the middle, and they have little areas that are cut out with planters in there. And they look real nice, though because of this, one of these has leaked twice into place, and they considered removing the planter. There was a poll done on the rest of the residents and I guess the whole building, as I understand. Anyway, most of them said take them out, and or take that one out at least, and. I think there's one person that was against it, one member. Adding reasonably priced electric automobile charging to carport areas currently appears to be infeasible, not workable. However, the search continues. Maybe the new Inflation Reduction Act, which emphasizes spending, inflation reduction to emphasize spending, okay, to stop climate change. And maybe we'll change all that. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next meeting of the third M&C planned for 1:30 p.m. Monday, September 12, live here in this room as well as on Zoom. We look forward to seeing some interesting items at that time. Thank you.
Oops, Ira has a question.
Could I give my report now? I have to temporarily leave.
Okay.
So I'll just do that out of order.
Okay.
My apologies.
One more
So-
out of order. Ira is going to talk about the third landscape committee.
Yeah, I'll be quick. We just had a department head update from Kurt, and some of that was showing what went on the first half of the year, them installing roughly 10,000 plants in third to replace dead ones and so on. There was an urban forestry program that was put forth that United is also partaking in. This is to keep our community better balanced with the types of trees we have, so we don't get heavy in any one particular type of tree when we need to replace a tree moving forward. So we will be selecting more water-wise trees to help us in that direction as well. And what you had also heard that came forth is a resolution that started in the Water Conservation Committee with the reduction and restrictions on potable water use for watering the plants. Our next meeting will be on September 1st at 9:30 here in the boardroom. So
Okay.
thank you. And
You have GRF landscape committee or no time?
okay, no, that's all right. I'll give both the similar for GRF Landscape Committee as well as the GRF Strategic Planning Committee have not met. They meet quarterly, and so there is nothing new to report there, except I'll just remind everybody that GRF has approved our new landscaping controller system, and that'll be put in over the next 12 to 15 months. Which should save everybody a lot of money and will save landscaping a lot of headaches and time in readjusting any kind of timings necessary for any area within the community, which is a great thing.
Thanks, Ira.
That's it.
See you later.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the third parking and golf cart subcommittee. Kush?
Thank you, Mr. President. Our meeting was held on July 27th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Staff evaluated cul-de-sac 33 for safety issues. They determined a section and painted it red. The work has been completed, and staff will continue to monitor the area to ensure that the safety issue has been resolved. Cul-de-sac 344, the Security and Compliance Department are working together to reduce the number of cars parking in unassigned parking spaces. 2017 parking assessment report was reviewed, and a new assessment will be scheduled for our current needs. Assessment, I don't mean by money, I mean by assessment of parking. EV charging was a hot topic to provide possibilities for new EV car owners. Since our resources in the village are old and limited, new creative ideas are being considered to enable charging. Our next meeting is on September 28th at 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kush. I'm going to talk about the Garden Villa Rec Room Subcommittee. This committee last met on May 26th, and I plan to work with staff to schedule the next Garden Villa Rec Room Subcommittee meeting after the 2023 budget is approved next month, so we can discuss the plan for the 2023 rec room maintenance. Moving on to the Water Conservation Committee. Donna?
Very excited to give this report. It's been kind of bad all along, so this is very exciting. The Water Conservation Committee had its quarterly meeting on July 28th, 2022. We met in the Elm Room, and I would request that all future agenda please show the Elm Room as the meeting room for the Water Committee. This was a very, very positive change for us. The Elm Room is here on the main floor. It is a room that is very conducive to interaction with our visitors. And so we had a very lively discussion. We had the president and the vice president of El Toro Water District there. We had we had members from Third, we had members from United. It was just a very lively meeting and very interactive. And so we're excited with that room. It does permit Zoom. We don't have TV in there yet. But it was just really nice and conducive, and we invite people to please come. Our next scheduled meeting is August 23rd at 9:30, and again, not 9:30, it's October 27th at 2. I looked down at the wrong page. And it will be in the Elm Room. We really invite people to come. So that's just for that piece of it. Part of the meeting, we were unfortunately concerned about the new announced increases in water rate. And what we learned and are very excited to know is that although the cost of water is going up, our sewer charges are dropping sufficiently that overall we anticipate a 4% decrease in charges for water and sewer combined. And that was, El Toro Water District's been great. Got a follow-up email from the general manager of El Toro Water District to make sure we were aware of this. And I want to read the last sentence of his email to me and to the committee because it's to all of our members, and it's a great big thank you. It says this is Dennis Cafferty, General Manager of El Toro. I also wanted to note that Third's potable water use in the last 12 months, July 2021 through June 2022, appears to be nearly 19% less than the previous year. I know you and Third Board have taken water use efficiently seriously and wanted to congratulate you and let me pass that congratulations on to our members and invite anybody interested to please attend our next meeting in October in the Elm Room.
Great, thanks, Don. This is great news.
Those people are more excited.
And finally, we have the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. This committee last met on Wednesday, July 27th, where we discussed modifying some existing resolutions. We also discussed and voted on updating the resolution regarding clarifying which board directors can vote during committee meetings that we talked about earlier this morning. And this committee will next meet on Tuesday, August 23rd at 9:30 here in the boardroom. We plan to discuss the overall compliance processes as well as rules for board meetings and rules for barbecues. That's it for third committee meetings. We'll now move on to share our monthly GRF committee reports, starting with the report of Community Activities Committee. Annie?
Thank you, President Long. The Community Activities Committee met on August 11th here in the boardroom. Brian Bruner gave his usual update about how things are progressing with staffing, and he indicated that things are starting to look a little bit better. They are getting some staffing in the process of getting them training. And to that avail, Siobhan also mentioned earlier about the new expanded hours for table tennis. And so we're looking more forward to that and having more times available for that. He also gave an update on upcoming concerts at the Performing Arts Center, that they provide high-quality musical acts at low-cost ticket pricing. Seats are still available for Queen's Nation, which is August 20th, the Ronstadt Revival, which is September 17th, and the Zeppelin, October 1st. Tickets may be purchased for the low cost of $20, $25, and $30 at the Performing Arts Center. Another thing that the committee, the finance department, did a really spirited discussion, a presentation about a proposed fee review for golfers. And it was very intense discussion about how the review process is actually taking place, the projected fee increases for golfers, for regular golfers, for visitors, and it gave the schedule fees for like carts and clubs, for the driving range, for the green fees, the 27 hole, the 18 holes, and just a wide range of fees that are projected. So the committee did look at that proposal and recommended referring it to the GRF board for their review. So the next meeting is scheduled for September 8th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom.
All right, well, we're going to continue with Annie, the Media and Communications Committee.
The Media and Communications Committee meeting did not occur this month. It was canceled, but I did want to highlight the August and September edition of the Village Breeze is out, and there were some really, really informative articles in the Breeze. A couple of them I'll just highlight. Jennifer Carmichael wrote a really nice article about Beyond the Gates, and it talks about different parks that you can visit that are really close by here close to Laguna Woods Village, where you can go and enjoy the outdoors and a little bit of fun and explore some of the nearby destinations. Our own director, Eric Nunes, wrote a really, really informative article about how to get in through the gates and information about the gate ambassadors and that whole process. So again, really, really, really informative article. Another one, Kurt Wyman wrote an article about reducing rodents and the rodent population. So again, we talk a lot about ways that we can communicate, and these are just really, really some amazing articles that inform residents about what's available and how we can, make our living here a lot easier. The next meeting is scheduled for September 19th at 1:30 in the boardroom.
All right. And still staying with Annie, Security and Community Access Committee?
The Community and Access Committee, that committee has not met since our last meeting. The next scheduled meeting is for, actually it's coming up August 29th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom.
Okay. And then the last one for Annie, the Website Ad Hoc.
The website ad hoc committee, and what's really interesting about this committee, and as we talk about stuff here and we talk about stuff that needs to go on the website, one of the things the committee was first informed of, the current website is asked to do way more than what it was originally designed to do. So that's why we're having a lot of trouble with stuff on the website, because that's not its original design. So the website ad hoc committee met a couple of weeks ago, and what we've done so far is we've developed an RFP. The committee has reviewed the RFP. Staff has gotten information. They did a survey with key departments and users of the website to get their feedback. So that feedback has already been compiled, and it's going to be part or an addendum to the original RFP when it goes out to the vendors. Where the RFP is right now is with Dan Yost. Once he reviews the RFP for any legal issues, then the committee will be free to send it out to vendors. The other the RFP submission for that. The committee was also tasked with looking at some websites for communities that are similar to us, just to look at their website and what information they have available on their website. And once we review these websites, we'll come back to the committee and give our feedback and our input in terms of what we thought worked well for them and what won't work for us as well. So it's a very, very informative meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for September 14th at 3 p.m. in the Sycamore Room.
Okay, great. Thanks, Annie. You can relax now. All right, moving on to the GRF Finance Committee. Donna, any updates?
Okay, and the GRF Finance Committee will be meeting tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 right here in this room. And we can anticipate that their report will look a little bit similar to ours, in that there is going to be probably a positive variance in their revenue, for the very same reasons we have it, with short staff, work not being able to get done, but the anticipation it will even out at the end of the year, and we will also hear about their budget projections for next year. And again, tomorrow afternoon, 1:30 in this room.
All right, thank you. How about the GRF Maintenance and Construction Committee, Ralph?
The last GRF M&C meeting was held on August 8th. There was a little discussion of the project log centering on the service center emergency backup power. Staff had looked at solar and microgrids, both found to be not beneficial at this time. They are still looking at fuel cell augmentation, and we expect a report soon. Overall space planning has kind of put Building E rebuilding in the background temporarily, as there's a desire to optimize the space we have in terms of serviceability, practicality and considering the proximity of supervision to working staff. A small contract's been let for replacement of a 450-foot damaged area of 5-foot-high fence on the back of the driving range. EV charging, that's always a major interest item. Apparently, SCE believes it to be feasible for our destination locations, and is still studying it. Seems to be a little question yet about, and this one never seems to go away, about how many chargers at a given point. They'd like more, we want less. The new Inflation Reduction Act may again help us. However, it seems that the feds want some larger, more impressive situations that they can point to rather than our little community here. We'll see. Hopefully there'll be more interesting information available at our next GRFM&C meeting scheduled for Wednesday, October 12, 9:30 a.m. here and on Zoom. Y'all are welcome.
All right. Anything new on the clubhouse facilities renovation ad hoc committee, John?
Director and all had agreed to cover. I was absent at that meeting.
Okay. Then Ralph, do you have an update for us?
Okay, I'll just remember a couple things offhand that I recall is that we have given a contract for the design of the Clubhouse One activity, and the designer wanted to meet with a representative of the community, or several. So I think they've decided to produce or nominate one person from each of the communities, each of the corporations, to do that coordination. And I asked John to do that. Their next meeting, or the first meeting, I think, with the vendor is scheduled for, I believe it was Thursday this week.
Okay.
And that's all I have now.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. Mobility and Vehicles Committee. Kush, anything new?
Mobility and Vehicles Committee meeting was held on August 3rd, 2022 at 1:30 in the boardroom. The staff presented the status of the different transportation services. A presentation was made on the comparative issues between the internal combustion cars, hybrid cars, and EV cars for the fleet. A new vehicle policy was presented which will assist staff for future vehicle buying. The next meeting will be October 5th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Okay. Thank you, Kush.
Thank you.
All right. Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings, John? All right. The Laguna Woods Village traffic hearing is going to meet tomorrow, and didn't meet last month, so we'll find out tomorrow with the update and update you next month on what happened this month. And then we have the Information Technology Advisory Committee, known as ITAC. They last met on Friday, July 29th. This committee is currently meeting monthly instead of weekly, as they had for the last 9 months or so. This committee is currently providing executive oversight to the ERP project. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, kind of an odd name, but essentially the system, once fully implemented, will be the automated tool used by staff, the boards, members, residents to manage most of the day-to-day activities needed to run the village. Workshops are currently underway with staff to review the financial functionality and to confirm that the new system meets all of staff's requirements, and if not, determine what options there are available to meet those requirements. And the ITAC will meet next on Friday, August 26th, to review the project status and confirm that everything is on track. And finally, we have the Insurance Ad Hoc Committee. This committee is made up of representatives of GRF, United, and Third boards, and last met on Monday, July 25th. The purpose of this committee is to work together to identify approaches to reduce the cost of property insurance within the village. Options being explored include but are not limited to, starting our own insurance company, self-insuring, combining United and Third's purchasing power to get better pricing. The meeting on July 25th was to review something called captives,
which is a way for organizations to create their own broker-managed insurance company. So it's just something that we heard from the brokers about and talked about. And the next meeting of the Ad hoc Insurance Committee is to be determined. And that concludes our committee reports. Oh, it looks like Donna had a question.
Yeah, not an
or comment?
update because it's on the list. The purchasing ad hoc has not met since its initial meeting in
Okay.
April when it prepared a modified purchasing agreement and passed it on to GRF.
Okay.
So, but it's on the list there, so I wanted
Okay, I wonder how that got missed. Okay. Thank you. And no plans to meet again anytime, as far as you know? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, probably why I got dropped off. One of those never-meeting committees.
Yeah.
All right, so we're now at agenda item 16, future agenda items. What we have so far on the list, the board members have kind of talked about to discuss at a future board meeting include, see what if we can get an up-to-date presentation from El Toro Water District, letting us know the latest regarding our water situation. Also working with CR&R, our trash hauler, to see if we can get a presentation regarding the amazing things they do with our organic waste that they collect from us. And as mentioned, we want to further discuss committees and how to get residents more involved. And we've also requested that staff provides us with the latest regarding solar energy so that we can discuss whether or not to progress with implementing more solar at this time. Are there any other items that any of the directors would like to add here to be discussed at an upcoming board meeting? Okay, I'm looking around and seeing none. All right. So we're now at getting close to being done. Director's comments. Jules, you have any comments? No, he's shaking his head no. Jim, shaking his head no. John, any comments?
Any comments, John? He's asking? No.
Okay, none for John. Ralph?
No comment.
Okay, Annie?
Yeah, just a reminder that the temperature is really, really warm outside, and just reminder for everybody to stay hydrated and watch out for everybody when you're out walking.
Thank you. Thanks, Annie. Chris, have any comments? No comments. None?
No comment.
Donna, none? Kush?
Nothing, just to echo Annie's comment, drink lots of water.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try to do that.
Thank you, nothing more.
Okay,
But
and I
not
just
from
want to
the
remind
homes.
everybody of our next monthly town hall scheduled for Wednesday, August 24th from 3 to 5 in Clubhouse 2. These monthly events are open forums where you can share your questions, suggestions, and concerns with me and other board members. So see some of you there. Javon, anything you have? And she says no. Paul says no. All right. I think business for our open meeting is now completed, and at this time, the monthly board meeting will recess for 10 minutes and reconvene to closed session. So we'll meet upstairs in about 10 minutes and have a working lunch. Thanks for those of you who participated, and thanks for everybody for listening. Goodbye. Okay. Hello.
It's on time.